is there are a range of organizations who are here today who just introduced themselves. And this body, and in your packet you'll see a mission statement, is one that we have been working on for a number of years, which represents the bringing together of various constituents of the African diaspora, recognizing that that diaspora is diversifying and is no longer what it once was. The reality is, however, the fact that we have that community does not mean that we are connected, that we're working with each other. So this body is a rare body in many respects, in that we bring together every 3 months, 4 times a year, continental Africans, the Afro-Latino caucus over here, Caribbean Americans, as well as African Americans.
First of all, let me say it's great to be in New York. I haven't been here for a while, and it's great to also to hear the introductions around the table. I understand who you are, and I understand the impact that you not only are having, but have had historically in building a base of support for Africa. I have the distinct honor of introducing my friend, Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Quao, who is the African Union's ambassador to the United States. We say the ambassador to Washington, and that's supposed to mean everything else, but for your purpose, she's the ambassador to the United States and also Jamaica and a number of other countries in the Western Hemisphere. I've known her for a long time. When I first met her, she was a country doctor in Nashville, working on the indigenous populations of poor black folks and keeping people alive and talking about hypertension and diabetes and things like that. We traveled to Africa a couple of times, went to the African Diaspora Summit in 2013 in South Africa. So she was minding her own business in Nashville, and the African Union called her and said, look, we need you to go to Washington and be the representative to the African Union in Washington. And I will say, I've been working in Washington for a long time. I go back. I know where all the bones are buried. I know who did what and who didn't do what. But I can say that we finally have a leader. She's my boss. I don't make a move in Washington without consulting her and taking her advice. I may not agree with her on everything, but I have to hear what she got to say. She has really singularly built a passionate commitment toward diaspora. I mean, the diaspora is front and center of everything that she does. She has managed to bring all networks of people together. The Africa House in Washington, her headquarters, is open to you. It's your house. She's going to make that plain to you. But I can say that she's been working diligently. She's the hardest working person I know. And I'm a hard worker myself. But I watch her sometimes, I get tired. I say, wow. She keep going. Last week we had a summit of African Diaspora Youth Summit in Washington, where we had 100 of the Yale young people from the Young African Leaders Initiative. We brought 100 diaspora. This is something I've been advocating for from the beginning. You know, why don't we put them together? And of course, the white folks at the State Department, oh no. Keep the African Americans over there, keep the Afro-Latinos over there, keep the young people over there, keep y'all all separate, keep us in the middle, so that we broke new ground under her leadership. And we had an African Diaspora Summit. And I can just say it was the most powerful meeting that I've ever attended. And I've gone to millions of them. So without further ado, I don't know where she's going to take this, but you're in for a ride. This is the right group. This is the right person. This is the right time. You know, this is the right time. So I want you all to stand up and welcome the ambassador to the African Union of the United States.
Let me start by thanking my brother Ron Daniels for even thinking of me. When Mel called, I really wasn't given a choice. He told me, you have to go, Ambassador. That is the right group that you must meet. So I said, okay, if Mel says so, I'm on my way. To the Consular General of Barbados, I met your president during CARICOM in, when was it? CARICOM was in June, or July, yes, wonderful lady. To the chief, Dr. Jeffries. To my sister who is hosting us here, distinguished guests, my brother Mel. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to stand in front of you this morning. And also thank you for just taking your time on a Saturday morning to come in and have us come together as people of African descent. I think as Mel said, I was a country doctor minding my own business in Tennessee when I was asked to come here. As part of my conversations with Madam Zuma, I wanted to know why she was so insistent that I took this position. And she said, well, the diaspora are such an important part of Africa's development. The heads of states are very clear about how there cannot be sustainable development in Africa without the significant participation of its children in the diaspora, starting from those who crossed the Atlantic in shackles and those who left much later in search of greener pastures. The reality is for Africa, the brain drain has been enormous. And Africa cannot build itself without repatriation of those brains. The real issue now for the African Union, through its African leaders, is the how. So she said, we're all grappling with the idea and how to bring the diaspora together. And she said, I don't have a plan either. But she said, you are a woman. I've given you the platform, so figure it out. So this is where we are. That is the call from the chair who appointed me. Yes, in addition to promoting Africa in the Americas, and right next to that, and I have reversed it. If you look at my mandate, is the promotion of Africa in the Americas and the diaspora. I have reversed it. My first priority now is the diaspora. Because when it comes to the sheer survival of the continent, the diaspora must be front and center. My talk today is going to be in 3 parts. I'm going to start talking about who we are and where we come from. Or rather start with where we come from, who we are, and way forward. And as Mel knows, there is one particular part of our history as Africans that defines the status of our situation in the world today. And that event is the Berlin Conference. And I've taken it and made it my mission to make sure that every person of African descent, in order for you to understand why Africa is where it is today, you must understand the Berlin Conference. Why did they meet in Berlin, 1884 from November to 1885 February? Prior to that date, of course, slavery had just ended in 1865. The Western world, the French, the British, the Italians, even the Russians, they are all haphazardly going into Africa. They heard about this beautiful, very rich continent with everything they can ever need. So as they were robbing and looting from the African people, pretty soon they started looting from each other. And then before you know it, they were fighting and killing each other. So the then Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, he was afraid that they were getting ready to have a European war on the African continent. So he called his crony, King Leopold of Belgium. He said, let's do something about this. We are all going into Africa and looting. Let's organize how we're going to loot from these monkeys. And so they called each other up and they met in Berlin. The sole purpose was for this gang of thieves to organize themselves as to how they were going to effectively steal and loot from the African people. How they were going to effectively put a system in place to see to it that the African people and the continent were forever defeated and dominated. So it was during that 3 months of deliberations, sitting on a big table like we are now, and across this table, a 5-foot map of Africa, the decisions were made. Where tribes were getting along very well, that was absolutely unacceptable. That means more countries came out of it. That means more, those same countries, one was given to France, the other one was given to Britain, the other one was given to Spain, to make sure that they don't even, over time, give it a generation, they don't even know each other. They don't speak the same language. And those that did not get along, they became one country. Let them keep fighting. So the Berlin Conference was a strategy to see to it that the Africans are forever defeated. So as I go around talking, I've had some, usually it's the educated, the bright ones, the professors. But Ambassador, you can't keep talking about the Berlin Conference. That's over 200 years ago. And my comeback to them is, when they made a decision to have Togo, Benin, Rwanda, Burundi, what did they have in mind? How can Togo be called a country? If this was a boxing ring, heavyweight, countries, please stand up. Togo gets up, United States gets up, China gets up. Now may the battle begin. What chance does Togo have? But on the books, Togo is a country. We were designed to lose. No single African country, if we continue as individual African country, can survive. No. You see, Togo needs to negotiate with the state of Delaware. There's parity. Nigeria needs to negotiate with the state of Texas. There's parity. But as individual African countries, it is so important that we understand that the strategy that they put in place in 1894 was designed for us to forever lose. And if we should have one African country that tries to have a leg up, because we are so small, it's very easy to take us down. Before you know it, there's conflict. It is in the books that of the 7 African leaders who were assassinated during the coup in the Francophone countries, they were all orchestrated by France. Why were those leaders assassinated? 1958, when the French were leaving their colonies, they made them sign what they called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. This pact necessitated that 85% of the Francophone countries keep their bank reserves in France. Sadly, that pact is still in existence today. So when the leaders who were now opening their eyes and saying, this does not make sense, how can I run a country with 85% of the money that I need? And then when I try to access the remaining 85, no, only 15%. If I try to access the remaining 85 that's in the French banks, I'm treated like a beggar. You're becoming too smart. Next thing you know, there's a coup, and you're assassinated on the Coup d'État. And then it gets to a point where everybody gets scared. If I try to raise my voice, they can take me down one way or the other. Now we are no longer doing coups. We're having conflicts. And who are we using for the conflicts? Our young people. And all they have to say, boo, and we run. So 1964, our Pan-African leaders of the time, realizing that Berlin Conference set us on a wrong path, on a losing path, almost on a train that's going to derail. It's just a matter of when. So they met together and created what they called the Organization of African Unity. It was during this meeting that Kwame Nkrumah declared that you were not African because you were born in Africa, but rather you are African because Africa is born in you.
All right.
He also proclaimed that Africa was for the Africans and that African Union was not. The AU has since been renamed AU in 2002, Our African leaders meet twice a year to discuss issues pivotal to the continent. One then begs to ask a question. Why is it that 55 years later, the dream of a united Africa is yet to be realized? It goes back to the Berlin Conference. It is for the same reason that as you try to analyze other ethnic groups in this country, which is the melting pot, with the exception of the American Indians, everybody in this country has a primary anchor that is outside the United States. The anchor in the United States is the secondary anchor. So the Indian diaspora, they realize that their primary anchor is in India. This is secondary. The Irish diaspora, same thing. The Chinese, the Mexicans, all other ethnic groups, they recognize their primary anchor. 2-3 generations removed, but they know where they come from. Now let's take it home to us black people.
Come on now.
We're the only ethnic group that's too busy trying to run away from our primary anchor. We are just floating like sails without an anchor. And until we realize that we must accept our anchor, our primary anchor, and connect with that primary anchor, there is no future for us. We shall forever be floating. We shall forever be controlled. Let me take it home a little bit. Those of you who are Africans, you might take continental Africans. You might take your friend, one of your sisters, brothers who happens to be white to Africa, and they work at Walmart. Guess what happens when you go to Africa? They're put on such a pedestal. You know what I'm talking about? Simply because of the color of their skin. Why is that? Let's take 2 black men and put them in the same room with one white man. Guess what? The 2 black men are so busy trying to distance each other so they can form an alliance. Let's reverse the tables. Now, it's 2 white men and 1 black man. The 2 white men stick together like super glue. Somehow, we can't even trust ourselves, let alone each other. Why is that? And we are the only race that does that. So the colonization and the legacy of slavery that we have gone through, it is deep. And until we recognize that we are suffering from this affliction, we can't begin to heal.
Yes.
Which is why it is imperative that we have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Because the healing begins with you having that serious conversation. Asking that image in the mirror. It's a very important question. Who are you? Why do you think the way you do? I attended a family gathering with one of my friends, African American, and 2 of the family members came in dressed in dashikis. And one aunt particularly took umbrage to that. Wanted to know what's up with these dashikis. She felt that this was cheapening their event because the 2 cousins came in dressed in dashikis. So our issues are huge. I was addressing a group of young people, and they were talking about DNA testing so you could know where you're from in Africa. These were young African diaspora, African Americans. And they said, no, I'm never going to do my DNA testing, because if I do and identify where I come from, this government might just send me back. We have a lot of work to do. We have some serious work to do. Last year, I was informed of a situation at Cornell where the African American students were protesting against the continental and Caribbean students. claiming that they were getting preferential treatment. They wanted me to issue a statement. I said, what is the statement going to do? I said, I need to go see the children.
All right now.
They need to see me. They need to feel me, and I need to feel them. So we flew to Cornell, and we had a town hall session. And in my speech, I asked the children, I said, if the issue was the quota for black enrollment, as they said the continental and Caribbean students are being used to fill the quota for black enrollment. I said, if the issue was enrollment, and the issue was foreigners, did it occur to you to go to the administration and also complain about Asian enrollment, Asian quota? They looked at me like, are you crazy? And I said, secondly, did it occur to you that maybe you could go to the administration and say, please, the quota for black enrollment is too small.
Yes.
Let's increase
right.
it.
There you go.
Yes.
Yes.
But instead, the mind that's suffering from the legacy of colonialism, the mind that's suffering from the legacy of slavery, said, go after your sister, go after your brother. So we find ourselves fighting over crumbs under the table when there's a 10-course meal going on the table. So instead, how do we get ourselves out of that mindset? It starts with that conversation with the image in the mirror. And when it comes to our children, we have a responsibility to let them know that you're not in a good place, that your thinking is in the wrong lane. And we have a responsibility to direct them into the right lane.
Yes.
But how do we direct them if we ourselves are in the wrong lane? That is where our problem is. The question I have is, as diaspora, some of the most, I like to say, beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible people I know. Why can't we get this right? We don't need anybody. We have ourselves. And all we gotta do is come together. Let me give you a simple example. I was talking to a group of bishops. I said, bishops, I found out that $50 million leaves black churches every Sunday. And by Monday, they're all lined up to deposit it in white bags. Some even drive past a black bank. Can you imagine if these monies have been going into black banks for all these many years? Our banks would be in a different place. You see, others take that money and fund each other. I don't know how many of you remember when President Trump met with the African leaders. He said, my friends go to Africa poor, they come back rich. And then I had others calling me to say, well, how could he say ambassador? I said, the man said the truth. Now, you may not want to hear it, but it is true. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to be a complainer and a noisemaker? Or are you going to do something about it? Let me take it home a little bit. There's so many of us here. If we were to say, we have a credit union, and everybody commits to opening an account, it's still your money. $10 a month. Just take 10 million out of the 55 million, 50 million in this country. That's 1.2 billion in 1 year. By just opening an account in a credit union, it's your money. But guess what I could do with that? I can then turn around and go to the African Union and say the diaspora in America are sitting on a credit union with $1.2 billion, and everybody would have only been put into it, your account would only have $120. No brainer. Guess what can come out of that?
Oh,
thank you. But it is even more crucial that we come together now. April this year, we saw the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is when the African leaders came together. Finally, we are beginning to break down the Berlin Conference. The African countries finally agreed to speak with one voice and speak as a bloc. One Africa, one voice, one country, one proud and strong. So the African Continental Free Trade Area is one giant step in destroying the Berlin Conference. Secondly, they also signed the Protocol for the Free Movement of People, which means regardless of where you were born in Africa, you're free to go and live and work wherever you want within Africa. Both protocols are currently now being ratified. Let me explain the process. So of the African Continental Free Trade Area, first the president has to sign and agree. Out of the 55 countries, we have 50 that have signed up to say, yes indeed, we're on. And out of the 55 countries, we only need 22 countries to ratify. And already 6 countries have ratified. They're ready for implementation. So we are hoping by December, we will have the 22 ratifications needed in order for implementation to begin. How is the implementation being done? Already, regionally, east, west, north, south, and central, we have regional customs units. So the integration of the 5 customs units will then result in the single African customs unit. Plus many other areas that are being looked at, because you can't have a successful African Continental Free Trade Area if people have to keep changing money from one border to the other. So this is all background work that's being looked at. So when the process of implementation comes, Afri-Eximbank is working on that. They say we must have a single African currency. Otherwise the Continental Free Trade Area is not going to succeed. The protocols for the free movement of people, over 30 countries, heads of states have signed. We only need 15 countries to ratify, and already 2 have ratified. By ratification, that means the president has agreed in principle, yes, I want my country to participate in this. Then he goes back home and put this through parliament to sign off. Both are supposed to be completed by December. I'm saying this to say, your Africa is changing. Everybody else is watching and strategizing on how to get into Africa when this happens. And we're the only ones who are not strategizing. And I'm sure when the others are flooding, they are already flooding into Africa, we will continue to complain. I'm here to tell you that in spite of the exploitation that has gone on in Africa for centuries, guess what? They've only tapped maybe 10%. Africa is extremely undervalued.
Yes.
I'm here to remind you that you are descendants of the original continent. When the world was one, it was called Pangaea. Through tectonic shifts, the other continents drifted away. Guess which continent has never moved?
Yes.
So it's not by surprise that we have everything and anything the world needs.
Yes.
Diamonds, check.
Come on now.
Gold,
Check.
oil,
Check.
cobalt, check. Vibranium,
Come on.
check. And that is all ours. And not only that, we are the origin of humanity.
That's right.
Humanity as we know it. The genome that runs in your blood, in your veins, is the genome of originality. Why then would you allow somebody to make you feel less than perfect? The pigment of ours, the melanin, that seems to scare some. It's original. It's a sign of originality. Anything else is lack thereof. So I'm here to say, my brothers and sisters, you are descendants of an amazing continent. A continent that's being exploited by everybody except us. We don't need to exploit Africa, we just need to go home.
Yes.
We just need to go home. They've done a great job of painting our continent as a diseased and dying continent. Well, if it is so diseased and dying, why are you going there? You tell us one thing, don't go to Africa, but they're running to Africa. The onus is on us to say enough is enough. That we are going to be the generation that's going to turn the corner. Because I don't know about you guys, but this can go on. Our circumstances, wherever you encounter us as black people around the world, are deplorable. How long does this have to go on before we can say we are sick and tired of being sick and tired? And that is why I'm here today. To say, as the African Union representative, I'm a woman on a mission. The diaspora must come home. And I hope we can join hands. I'm looking to put a board together that's going to be an AU advisory board, that we can begin to set an agenda. So when issues come up, just like I talked about the 1.2 billion, 10 million, each one paying, opening their own account for $120 a year. Can you imagine when I can walk back to the African Union and tell the African leaders that the diaspora are sitting on an account with $1.2 billion? Now, that is a voice. Are you with me?
Yes.
No money, no voice. Let's be clear about that. We can keep talking as long as we have no money. We are noisemakers. It is just that simple. And this is a simple, no-brainer idea that I'm trying to sell to the diaspora to say, if you believe in Africa, let's identify a credit union, and there are quite a few that are owned by us. That we could say, open an account so you can stand up and be counted. When I walk in and I say the diaspora in America are sitting on an account in 1 year with $1.2 billion, they want the African passport. I got ears. They will listen to me. But if I go to them now, they're saying, where's your army? Where are the diaspora? We have to stand up and be counted. And if we believe in ourselves, our children, and generations to come, we have to do this. We have to come together, once again, as one united African family, proud and strong. Thank you for listening to me.
Package this presentation into a video that could be disseminated widely. I hope there are plans for you to visit every campus in the United States. And then finally, I love the idea of the Continental Diaspora Bank. It's something we've discussed with Dr. Ron Daniels. Help us narrow down and identify that credit union for us to support. I'm ready to write my check today. Thank you, Madam Ambassador.
Well, I can only echo Milton. Thank you so much for this inspiring idea. We've known this office for over a period of time now, and we have always struggled to find a way to get the word out, to chart a way so the diaspora can have a message around which they can rally and take it out of the ivory tower to bring it actually where the people are so we could do something. So you're sounding like we could do something finally. And how can you practically, with this forum and some others, African organizations and African individuals, be able to actually materialize this idea of an African bank or an African credit union? How do you see the steps actually being actionable?
Thank you, my brother. My plan is to continue to run around like a chicken without a head. Last night I came late because I had to address a group of diaspora in Washington, D.C. I'm here today. On Tuesday, I'm going to Charlotte. From Charlotte, I'm going to Jackson, Tennessee, believe it or not. Then I'll end up in Nashville. From Nashville, I'm ending up in Philadelphia and then Reading, PA. Then I'll be back, Boston. To answer both your questions about the credit union, in Boston, there is a group of diaspora who have started just finished registering a fairly new credit union. I'm eyeing them. So I'm also going to be meeting with them when I'm in Boston on the 6th to try and see how we can work together and support them as AU, and let's use that as the credit union that we can all rally on. Just open your account and just deposit your money. So I'm eyeing the one in Boston. There's another one in Mississippi, but I'm tending to lean more towards the one in Boston, unless others do come up. That can be by recommendations. And also in terms of trying to say, how do we bring this, how do we actualize it? Again, I'm hoping by the end of the year, and I'm going to be counting on all of you, we need to have an advisory board that meets quarterly to decide on way forward. For example, with this credit union, it is the advisory board. These funds, we agree they're going to be used for bigger projects. I equate an example of somebody wanting to get a gas station. That's all nice and good. But why do you want to get a gas station when you can own an oil rig? Whereas before, it seemed like it's so far-fetched that we can't own an oil rig. Guess what? That's why I'm here. I'm here to open doors. When the diaspora are together, I can open just about any door you want. I can think of opportunities right now. I was just in Zimbabwe. There are mines that the president would like to see opened. Just come and start working with them. This is true. These opportunities are all over. But because of a little bit of money, we are not able to access them. With that $10 a month,
Yes.
organizations can own a gold mine. You can own several gold mines. You can own cobalt. I found out Zimbabwe has the largest reserves of iron ore. 45 trillion metric tons. I didn't know that. The next largest is Australia with 33 trillion. They need a mine to mine the iron ore. That's a great opportunity. Great opportunity. And getting started, I was looking at the figures, it's a no-brainer. Together, we can do that. I could go from one country to the other, to the other, to the other, and present opportunities that diaspora can get involved in. But that can only happen when we come together. So that's one area. The second area, I have done a presentation to the chairman of the African Union, and presenting my vision and the programs that I would like to implement, and some I am in the process of implementing. But the biggest one that's of particular interest to me is the Wakanda villages. And I renamed it Wakanda after Black Panther. Remember what Madam Zuma said to me? She said, figure it out. So I pondered over how am I going to bring this crazy group of people who are scattered from all over the place, and we're all coming with different ideas, just like we are, like any other family. I said, this group of people, like any family, you got your menopausal mother, you got your schizophrenic aunt, you got your alcoholic uncle, you know? But we still are one big happy family. We don't disown each other. I started looking first, I started by itemizing the issues that Africa is dealing with. Let's look at healthcare. If all the Black American doctors, continental doctors, the African diaspora in the United States doctors were to go back to Africa today, we're only going to need about 20% of the need. Africa today needs about 1.2 million doctors. So taking it home again to say, before you start complaining and accusing these heads of states, and I'm not making any excuses for them, but I want you all to understand, no amount of money can be put into healthcare in most of the sub-Saharan Africa that will deliver the desired results. The doctors are simply not there. You have countries with no orthopedic surgeon, no neurosurgeon, maybe 1 or 2, OBGYNs, maybe 10. You have the doctor-patient ratio of 1 doctor to 100,000 people. That is not sustainable. I have traveled around the continent. Beautiful hospitals, built American standards. The wings are closed because there are no doctors. That is our reality, ladies and gentlemen. So the brain drain is a serious issue for Africa. And that's why we, as the children, must step it up. So the question of access to health care must be addressed. The next issue is access to power. Without electricity, everything comes to a halt. Some may not be aware, but the majority of the sub-Saharan countries, again, over 50% of drugs going into those countries have zero bioavailability. People are dying thinking they're taking blood pressure medicines, diabetic medicines, antibiotics when they're taking chalk, in some cases poisonous substances, and nobody is holding these murderers to task. It's just going on like it's a non-issue. And yet, they want to find issues to complain about that president and that president. They want to talk to me about corruption in Africa, which I'm not saying we don't have. But I'm saying while you're talking about corruption inside Africa, let's also talk about the corruption coming from the outside. Because it takes two to tango. I can't be corrupt by myself. The dollar value of the corruption coming from outside Africa is significantly larger. But you see, they want us to focus on the piddly little issues, while the big looting is going on. I use an example of a head of state who stole $1 billion. So there he is, walking right past me carrying $1 billion in his briefcase. And then on the other side, there's France, who is taking over $500 billion out of Africa every year. So here comes France walking by with $500 billion in his briefcase. You want me to spend my energies on this one with $1 billion? While completely ignoring the one with $500 billion? And has been doing it for centuries?
Come on now.
I know. There's something wrong with this picture. But they want us to be completely blind of what France is doing. You want to buy a cabbage in the Francophone countries? It's from France. You walk into the grocery store of most Francophone countries, it's all from France. The oil, discovered and yet to be discovered. The minerals, discovered and yet to be discovered. They all belong to France. And the Francophone countries get royalties. Are you getting my point? That rather than finding ourselves, say they're complaining about somebody who bribed you trying to get your visa to go to Nigeria, let's talk about the real issues. And that's where we need to begin. Our 500 billion must stay in the continent. Maybe we won't need to bribe anybody. But there's some bigger issues that we, as children of Africa, must understand the games that are being played. So going back to what I was trying to say, now, which questions are we answering? So healthcare, the idea of building what we're calling the diaspora centers of excellence, where we, the diaspora, what is needed in Africa is capacity building. And we as the diaspora, we have a responsibility. While we may not want to go and relocate to Africa, but you could take a contract, go teach. So if you're a doctor, we want to open a 1,000-bed hospital. The beauty is that now I have two presidents competing. Zambia was the first one to give us land. And when I was in Zimbabwe 3 weeks ago, the president of Zimbabwe had heard about my land, the land we got from the president. He said, so I heard they gave you a little bit of land. And I said, yes. He says, they have a lot of land. They should have given you thousands of hectares. And I said, well, Your Excellency, this is all I have. He said, okay, what would it take for you to come to Zimbabwe? And he said something that was very funny. He said, well, my sister, let me tell you. You see, Victoria Falls is like a woman. If you're looking at her from the Zambian side, you are seeing her back. And when you're looking at her from the Zimbabwe side, the choice is yours. He said, tell me how much land you need. Initially, I said 300 hectares. He goes, only? And I said, okay, then if you say it, I'll go up to 1,000 hectares. He says, now you're talking. In a nutshell, they're looking into, he has already called the team. I met with them before I left. It's in a special economic zone, prime location in Zambia. The president is ready to give 1,000 hectares, plus any more that we need to the diaspora to open this village. So 1,000-bed hospital, teaching hospital with a university. Do you think we can have problems running those two entities? Absolutely not. Everything and anything and any specialty we need is here in the diaspora. Then, we also have over many billions of dollars going Africa every year, out of Africa every year, for what we are calling overseas healthcare. The presidents, the ministers, the billionaires, the millionaires, and even the ones without the money, they're coming together and finding it somehow. They're all going outside Africa for healthcare. That has got to stop. So we plan to have 5 of these regional hubs, which are basically going to be developmental hubs for each region with downstream development. We're going to have hotels, 5-star hotels. So now, these heads of state no longer have an excuse, because we're going to bring the best of the best surgeons, the best educators, the best everything, because it's all here in abundance in the diaspora. We're going to bring it to Africa. And we, the diaspora, are going to take responsibility for building our Africa the way we want it. So we will have the hotels. The hotels are going to be part of it. Not only are we doing health tourism, but we're also promoting tourism in Africa in general. When you look at the tourism dollars, Africa is with the best destinations in the world. We're only realizing 1%. It's sad, but that is our reality. So we'll have also, starting with the 200 megawatt power plant, expandable to 1,000. We're also going to have a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant so we can stop the bad drugs coming into Africa. And then the housing development that comes with it and the infrastructure that comes with it. It will be a modern, quote unquote, village. It's really a mini city with roads that are ready for self-driving cars, monorails to go around the village, and all of it master planned by the diaspora. This was well received by the African, the chairperson of the African Union when I did my presentation. I won't mention names, but a law firm was brought to my attention by another ambassador, and they wanted to know how they could work with us, with the African Union. I said, well, you know, I got this project that we're working on, and I sent him a presentation on Wakanda. He called me back the following day, and he really, really wanted to meet with me. So he comes in, and I still remember he was holding the document. He said, Ambassador, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. In my document, I'm very clear. This is about the African diaspora. I define who the African diaspora are, that this is a project that's going to be run by the diaspora. So there was no misunderstanding there. So to my surprise, his interest, and he was not of our color, I can run with this. This is brilliant. I can even take it to President Trump. He will love this. He will love this. That's a conversation that may I just say, the interest was quite amazing. Talking about they can take this to Congress, they can get this accepted as a program. Can you not record that? I'm off.
Cut that out.
I need to see the camera now.
I would want the ambassador to say something about what she's envisioned for you. One of the things I noticed about most of the people sitting around the table, a lot of them got gray hair. I don't see enough of them who are 25 and younger. I saw a little young baby there, but I don't think the baby qualifies. But I know you have engaged a con. You've engaged some of the NBA basketball players. We had David West in the audience last week, with TJ Warren from the Phoenix Suns, and I tried to get myself a contract with those guys, but they wasn't listening to me. But I'd like to hear what your vision is for generating support among the next generation and preparing them to assume their role. Also, women. I know women have been at the forefront of your mission, and you have worked to empower women in the diet. Maybe you can say something about that. I'm hoping out of this group, I see a summit coming where we're not talking about agonizing, but we're talking about organizing. And I see a summit of like-minded people around the country. I see it next year sometime, but that just might be me talking. But maybe you could respond to that.
The youth, of course, are extremely important, not only within the diaspora in the United States, but even on the continent. So what we have done for the youth, we're establishing Pan-African Diaspora Youth Association. And for women, we've started in DC. We have a fairly active Pan-African Diaspora Women Association. And we tried to have a Pan-African Diaspora Men Association. They met twice, and then they called me and said, well, Ambassador, can we just not meet with the women? You men are useless. Without the women. That was too funny. But we're still, now they're calling me back. They said, Ambassador, please, we need to get this done. So we're going to be having, we're going to try again to get the men to organize. Of course, it will be an AU Diaspora chapter. But the reason we want to organize the communities further into the youth, the women, and the men is to say when we start messaging, if it's an issue or information that is for the youth, we want to be able to reach only the youth. If it's information about opportunities for women, we want to reach only the women. The men, I don't know what category you fall into. Nobody wants to do anything for you guys. I think it's because they are intimidated by black men, I suppose. But we want to be able to organize ourselves so the messaging is easy and clear, but also professionally. So as you register, you can go to auwashingtondc.org and just register. And make sure you put your profession there. So we want to be able to say if we need to reach out to orthopedic surgeons, the message goes to the orthopedic surgeons. If we want to reach out to history professors, the message goes to the right people. So our communication is smoother and cleaner. For the youth, we had to go and request the State Department to see if we could access the YALI people, the YALI fellows when they come annually. They gracefully accepted the request. And so we had our first African Diaspora Young Leaders Summit. It was a resounding success. Unbelievable. These young people, they are still sending emails, they're coming, stopping by the mission. And in general, they're saying it's the best summit. Some of them have been coming. They were invited to come back 2-3 years back. And in general, those who have never been to Africa, they're saying this is the first time that I can now say I have a phone number of my brother on the continent. That if I should decide to go to the continent, I have somebody to stay with. They created the relationships that are needed. How can we link up if we don't know each other? So the Pan-African Diaspora Women, so we're hoping with the youth, we're going to continue to encourage them. They've now created a platform for the youth, the ones from the continent and the ones in the diaspora. We hope that continues to grow and they can continue to network. When they come together, it becomes easy. For example, 5 of them happen to come same day, different times, to come to the office. And one of them, the very first one, he said he was going to be going to Charlotte. He lives in Nigeria. He's flying into Charlotte and then go on to drive about 2 hours away. I said, oh, guess what? I'm also going to be in Charlotte. He's arriving on the 20th. I said, well, can you wait for me? I'm going to be in Charlotte on the 21st. Let me see if I can get you accommodation. The long and short of it is, the company that I'm going to tour, it has these solar-powered units that can light up 5 rooms, a refrigerator, a TV, and a stove, plus, of course, the electrical outlets. This company is willing to send a container as long as somebody can manage it. And the clients, they pay $30 down and $10 a month, pay as you go. And we can bring electricity to the villages and anywhere in Africa. So these young people, I presented that to them, and I said, here's an opportunity. As a young Yali fellow, you could run a business here. You could provide power to so many people. So they're going to be renting a car, and they're coming to join me. We're able to organize accommodation for them. That's what we can do when we come together. And I'm challenging them to say, this is such a no-brainer, that we can have all the young Yali fellows doing that and bringing power to Africa. And then I get another call when they started circulating that I was coming in Charlotte. And my diaspora contact calls me, says, well, ambassadors, Singer, I guess he's from North Carolina, Singer sewing machine. They have about 100 machines they want to give. And there could be more, but they want to know where to start. So they have their headquarters in DRC. So I reached out to one of the Padua women. I said, you're from the DRC. There is an opportunity here. Since their headquarters is in DRC, maybe we could start with DRC. She said, sure, ambassador, so she's coming too. So again, when we network, this is what can happen. As the projects come, because we are connected, we can disseminate the information, and that's why it's so important that we come together and stand up and become.
Okay, I have to make some executive decisions here as a facilitator, right? And I'm going to do the following, and bear with me because we have a time constraint, and what I said from the beginning is that our principal purpose for being here was to hear from the ambassador.
Right.
And I think it's been worthwhile. I want to say a couple of things, and then I'm going to talk about how we proceed. Number one, I want to just apprise people that based on a conversation that we had, Mel and Don Rojas and I, a few weeks ago, we got together and I wanted to visit with Mel and go over a number of questions and issues because we've worked together over the years on a number of projects. And out of that, it was agreed that that Don Rojas would actually come and meet with Maureen, right? And so I just want to amplify what that means. Because Don Rojas, who sits here, you know, as many of you know, and those of you who don't know, we have some young people back there who may not know, we're going to have you all introduce yourself, was the Director of Communications for Maurice Bishop in the People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada.
Yes.
He was also the Director of Free Speech Television. Free Speech Television.
I remember that.
And of course, he was the editor of the Amsterdam News and general manager of WBAI. And most recently, he was called upon by Professor Sir Hilary Beckles of CARICOM to create University of West Indies Television. He is the one who's responsible for that. Right? And I say that because of the assets that are in this room, so that when we talk about Don having the communication that you're already having, Mamadou, who is a world-renowned communications person, and so what I'm saying is, Mamadou, with your excitement, let's coalesce with Don, and then we start reaching out to other people so we can work with concretely our dear beloved sister, who's the Director of Communications. Okay, that's a concrete networking piece that we want to pull together. I just want to say parenthetically, Boston is, when you met in Boston, we knew of your visit there because Dr. Jemadar Kamara, who you met there, is on the board of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century. He is one of our board members. And that formation is similar. That's the other formation in the country that's similar to this. The Pan-African, they call it something, we say dialogue, they call it the Pan-African Forum there. So we're very familiar with that and have lots of contacts in Boston as well. I also want to say that we need to arrange a webinar with George Fraser and the Power Networking Network. He has something he convenes every year called the Power Networking Conference. George Fraser has the largest group of black professionals in the world, 65,000 associated with this network. Many of whom would be attracted to interfacing with. So we need to, the conference is not until next year, but the urgency at the moment suggests that I would like to facilitate a conversation with George Fraser and a webinar with some of his key people, because there are people in there who have significant resources, but they could be plugged into some of these specific projects. So I just wanted to mention that as a piece as well. And of course, those black banks that you just referenced, they are most recently with the African Methodist Episcopal Church have launched a major initiative to aggregate those black banks.
Reverend Jonathan Weaver.
Yeah, well, Weaver, there's a whole bunch of folks like that we're all connected with, who could be, very, but they just launched there's a whole thrust in this direction that that's moving. So I just wanted to signal that, and also to say that I think the idea of this advisory committee is wise, because as you navigate all of the dysfunctionalities and the this and the that and so forth, it is good to have some people who can help you with eyes and ears and help to do that as well. What I'd like to do in the interest of time is to say this. There's no way that we can complete the agenda that we have as stated, right? This is just not functional. And so therefore I think we need to do, we'll make a modification. We may have to have a special meeting, or we may have to do something along those lines. We'll figure that out. Before I do anything else, though, I do want to let those persons who joined, and some of them are young people who have come, and have come at the behest of Milton Alamati and others. So those of you who have not introduced yourself, who just quickly would stand and introduce yourself so that the ambassador might see you. There are a range of organizations who are here today who just introduced themselves. And this body, and in your packet you'll see a mission statement, is one that we have been working on for a number of years, which represents the bringing together of various constituents of the African diaspora, recognizing that that diaspora is diversifying and is no longer what it once was. The reality is, however, the fact that we have that community does not mean that we are connected, that we're working with each other. So this body is a rare body in many respects, in that we bring together every 3 months, 4 times a year, continental Africans, the Afro-Latino caucus over here, Caribbean Americans, as well as African Americans.